Hello everyone and welcome to the Lumon Green Building webinar. We are thrilled to have you here with us today for this insightful discussion on the latest trends in low carbon apartment building with Lumon balconies. And during this webinar, we will explore the role of sustainability in the apartment building business and examine how glazed balconies can contribute to this green revolution. And we will also dive into how Lumon can assist in meeting the current market sustainability requirements, both in new construction and renovation projects. I'm glad to see that we have lots of attendees around the world online. It looks like this kind of topic is raising a lot of interest all around. And our speaker today is Jari Miettinen, Vice President of International Operations at Lumon. And Mr. Miettinen has an extensive experience in international business and global growth development. And as a head of Lumon sustainability program, he will provide us valuable insights into the world of sustainability and how it aligns with the latest industry trends. I am Evelina Päiväniemi, and I'm responsible for B2B marketing operations at Lumon Group, and I'll be your host today. Then just a couple of words about the technical things. You will find the Q&A box in the menu bar and feel free to ask anything during the session, and we'll try to answer in the end of the session. And if you're joining this through a mobile device, you might not see the Q&A box, but in that case, please be in contact with us after the webinar, and you can find our contact form on the website at lumon.com in the professional section. And through that, you will be connected to the right people in your country. And this session will be recorded and shared for you after the webinar is over. Thank you for joining us. And let's now dive into today's discussion and explore how we all can build a more sustainable future together.
Hello, everyone. Evelina made a good introduction of this topic, and let's first have a look at what is sustainability. As such, it looks like, at least in the events where I've been talking about this topic amongst the engineers and construction people, the whole word of sustainability has been a little bit open, and let's have a look first about what that is about. Here we have a generic definition of sustainability. I haven't created that, but that's actually, I'm referring to some other university people who have made it. So sustainability in business is about solving problems of people and planet, not making money by creating more problems. I think that's a very good general definition. So we should avoid creating more problems and rather solve the problems and then make money through that. So that's the generic definition about sustainability in business. Then when we dive further into sustainability in Europe and in general in the world, but particularly in Europe, we have ESG framework, a framework which is defined particularly by the European Union as such, and that they have issued a number of directives related to this, and one is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is using this framework particularly. And so ESG stands for environment, social responsibility, and governance. So 3 components, and those are very relevant to any company now in Europe to be ready to report on them. First, of course, it will be the big companies, and particularly those ones which are in the stock exchange, but then also next stage, next year, also the other bigger companies need to start reporting. Now, in there we have, under those E, S, and G, 3 subtopics under each of these. So in environment, we have climate, biodiversity, and circular economy. And in social responsibility, we have well-being at work, the society, which is surrounding the business, and the value chain, which is meaning basically the value chain from the very origin of the materials and or services that are in question, which are altogether then building the end product of this case that we are talking about in each time. Then governance is actually a generic governance thing where we have the traditional economy. So economical reports are important and continue to be so, but then also governance as such, meaning that the companies are supposed to take care that they are dealing with appropriate customers and appropriate suppliers, and also they take good care of their own people, so that the actual organizations are working as they are supposed to work. We are talking there about avoidance of money laundering kind of things in construction industry, which is very relevant in the world scale. And then the third one there is public reporting. I already mentioned this corporate sustainability reporting directive, which makes it mandatory for certain size of companies to do so. And for example, Lumon will actually issue a voluntary report already in the next few weeks, and that is not necessarily one-to-one according to the required standard, but we are doing this voluntarily, like two years in advance. Now, when we talk about ESG, and particularly in construction industry, very often what is the most relevant is the environment part of it, which means climate related things, so CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, and then biodiversity, which are related typically to the raw materials, and of course, how will the building project itself change the biodiversity in the location where it is. And then circular economy, meaning that how much of once already used materials are used in making construction materials, as well as also what happens at the very end of the life cycle to the construction materials. So those are the main topics, and in this session we will focus on this environment part mostly, because that seems to be most relevant to our customers. At least we have got more questions related to that rather than other aspects, which is not meaning that the social responsibility and governance are of lesser importance. It's not like that, but at least we get a lot of questions related to environment. Now, if we move on to that environment part, everybody has heard about the climate change, of course, and now the researchers are telling that this 1.5 Celsius degree global warming compared to the pre-industrial time will be exceeded, and it means that target is still very relevant. And now the closer to that we will be in the whole globe, the better, because then of course the implications to everyday life and everyday living of people, and particularly to the nature, are then smaller, of course. But now if we focus on the construction industry as such, what is the role of construction in all this? Basically, in the constructed environment, the constructed environment produces around 30% of all greenhouse gases. It's really big, so 1/3 essentially. And then if we think about the construction environment, meaning when the buildings are being built, that actually uses around 40% of primary resources. Primary resources means basically resources which haven't been used. So materials, if we put it very simply, materials which have not been used earlier for any kind of other use. So 40% of all virgin resources and materials which are made are going to construction and building. And then the constructed environment consumes about 50% of all raw materials. So no matter if it's virgin or not, actually 50% of all raw materials are used in construction. Of course, here we are not talking only about apartment kind of buildings, not only about commercial buildings or anything like that. It is also related to the whole infrastructure, roads and so on, of course. So, but that gives a little bit of an idea what is the role of building industry in general in all this environmental discussion. Then, if we look at the trends as such, to sustainability and companies and businesses to be more and more sustainable, there's two kinds of trends. One is the pressure from the financial institutions, so the people who have the money. It's actually investors and investment companies, but also very much, if we put it simply, the banks, which are financing the developers for the developers to create new dwellings, new apartments for people. And in general, it's already so today that the developers get actually money at lower cost if the developer can show that the particular project is actually being built with lower greenhouse gas emissions than usual. And that will be an increasing pressure as such. So this is actually coming from the financial and finance business in general in the globe, more and more. Then there's the other aspect which I've already talked a little bit about, which is the regulatory pressure, and particularly if we think about the world scale here, European Union is really leading in that. It's very clear. You can talk to anybody and who's environmental specialist, then basically the regulation in European Union is actually the most advanced, if you put it that way, in a positive way there. So, for example, all apartments with very small number of exceptions must meet the energy class D requirements by 2030, which is meaning the energy class D means actually it's about heating energy and it's also about cooling energy of apartments. That's a very heavy requirement and has an impact on really millions and millions of apartment houses everywhere in Europe. And then the third kind of pressure is the European Union pressure to start reporting the ESG now. That's a very heavy pressure, and it will actually mean in practice that the businesses which are under this pressure, they have to publish their reports basically to everyone. I mean, it's going to be, all those reports are going to be collected in one database, and where the reporting is available to everybody to compare the companies to each other. And not only these companies, of course, which have this requirement, will need to focus on these topics, because of course all these bigger companies are using subcontractors or material providers, and which is meaning that the whole value chain, is actually under this pressure of creating such reports. Then what are the consequences and implications of those trends actually in new development? So the developers must pay attention to the products that are installed. So how to build the building, and what you, of course, actually most of all the relevant emissions, for example, are already in the materials and in the products which are part of the building. So the developers must start focusing on that. I'm talking now and more and more, with a number of developers who have questions related to, for example, the Lumon products. And I just finished a call an hour ago where I opened up that what is the situation with Lumon products, with one of the biggest, construction companies in the world, actually. And so that's the when you are building new apartments, then the other side is this existing building potential, which is under huge renovation need. So all apartments must be renovated in principle. And so we are talking here about millions and millions of apartments. And then, the third consequence is that basically, particularly in the bigger European Union countries like Germany, France, Spain, etc., the governments have chosen the way to give support to help in this transition to more environmental friendly building projects and more environmental friendly living in apartment buildings. So that's actually all in all, those are the key things. And as I mentioned, the pressure is coming down from those bigger players further to the product suppliers like Lumon, and then they're also to the material suppliers of ours. And this is actually going down to even the screws that you are using in the building, because, for example, you cannot have any poisonous materials there in the future as such. Okay, what is the role of sustainability in apartment buildings? If we go deeper in there, according to one university study, and this is giving basically the rough numbers here, the carbon footprint of an apartment house is between 1.1 and 1.9 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent unit per square meter of such building on average over the whole life cycle. So this is from the beginning of the building, of basically excavating the ground, and then to the very end when it is actually being demolished and all that. And nearly 30% of these emissions are linked to the manufacturing of a building material. So, okay, it's not 100% because, of course, we are talking about 50 to 100 years of life cycle. Officially, it's today, depending a little bit on a EU country, it's 50 years, but it's more and more, we are talking about 100 years of life cycle that such buildings should last in usable condition. And so that's why, over that period of time, there's a lot of energy consumption for cooling and heating, and that's why the construction part is 30%, which is giving another interesting thing to this equation. So the more you can build the building so that energy saving is taken into account, that's actually better over that life cycle. And then, the second thing is that to influence to that 30% of these emissions, which is the reduction of CO2 emissions in the building materials. So those are the basically two key things: energy savings over the life cycle, and of course minimizing the renovation need over that life cycle, and then reducing the CO2 emissions of the actual materials that are used in the building. Okay. Then, of course, the big question here, we are in business. So what can you do to save money and be more sustainable in an existing building by renovating it? So there's two aspects here. Energy, basically, we're talking about renovation area, and then new construction. So the two key things is that is the energy saving, and the second aspect is saving the built house as much as you can to minimize the use of new materials in the next renovation cycle. And in the Lumon case, there are university studies which are telling that you can save energy by putting balcony glazings, for example, to the balconies. So the key thing is that because the facade structure becomes thicker, and then there's like air cushion in a way in front of the actual surface of the body of a building, that saves energy, whether that's cooling or heating. And particularly if you are using, for example, the blinds that Lumon is providing, for example, you can really save significant amounts of energy. We will come back to that a little bit more. And then saving the building itself. Of course, if we think about existing buildings, the energy saving to reach the energy class D is the key thing, but saving the building itself and particularly for the concrete material not to really erode. And we are talking about a physical phenomenon called decarbonization, which is meaning that concrete as such is actually going apart, over a certain period of time, but you can reuse the pace it's doing so. So concrete is losing its strength over time, and if you protect the materials particularly against water and any other aspects or weather conditions, and of course we are talking here also about freezing and melting kind of phenomena as well. But this phenomenon happens anyways, but you can decrease that significantly, by protecting the facade, for example, against it. And for example, over 100 years period of time, it has been calculated that it might be possible that you would need to make only one facade renovation over such period of time. If you build now the building appropriately, and then if you renovate the building, the existing building, so that the facade is really protected against this kind of erosion and decarbonization. So then in general, the reducing the CO2 emissions of the building materials as such, if we think about the building in the larger picture here, the big question, of course, is that, okay, what's the role of balconies in general? And balconies as outdoor space are much lighter and more sustainable to build and maintain than the conditioned air indoor space. That's just a fact. And again, this statement I've got from a university professor, actually. So it makes sense to enhance the living space by framelessly glazed balconies, and that gives you more room for life, as we say, and then that's more environmental friendly than doing it in another way. Now, the key thing here is that all over Europe, the balconies are being built anyways. It's part of the architecture. Now, if you don't protect the balconies with frameless glazings, it means that typically that space is not usable at all, simply because you get all the rain, the snow, you get a lot of dirt in there, you get the birds and other animals, small insects coming, onto your balcony, and you can't use it. And if it's windy, you can't use it. Now, with this kind of solution, you can turn the balcony to be really part of your living space, even if that is still, from the regulation perspective, regarded to be outdoor space. So our solution is such that, it remains as outdoor space, and this is really fundamental as such. So here, that's the theme that we the background for us to use this this saying, more room for life. Okay, then if we dive more into the heating energy savings, this is already a 9-year-old study that was made, and it is just reflecting the level of energy saving in terms of heating energy. Now, you shouldn't look these numbers to be very precise. These are average numbers on buildings and apartment buildings we are talking about buildings which are being built certainly before 2015, and then even a little bit older one. But that's giving you a little bit of an impression here what we are talking about here. In the north of Europe, you can save up to 16% of heating energy. We have basically there's proof of that. Now, in the southern part of Europe, just the other day, in the beginning of June, I heard from Spain an architect saying that actually in Spain, you could actually switch off your whole heating system, because the balcony is going to keep the warmth inside to that level. So in some cases, we are talking about 100%, energy saving. But I want to remind everybody that the percentages are not necessarily all the key things here, because of course in the south, your heating energy, bill in general is very low compared to the north. But in the south, actually, the whole equation turns around when we are talking about cooling energy. But as said, basically, this kind of balconies are helping with that question as well. And actually, Lumon is continuing to study this, and actually, hopefully, in the next 12 months, and hopefully even sooner, we could actually provide you basically calculations how much basically is the energy saving with Lumon glazed balconies in a particular building, in a particular place or location in your country. And so that's one thing which we are working on very hard at the moment, that we would be able to do that. So you would just give us, your location in Google Maps and the orientation of the house and the orientation of the balconies, and we could actually give you an estimate, a quite reliable estimate. As said, we have in principle here basically university studies which are the basis for all this. Okay, here is a concrete example about saving the building itself. In the picture, you see that the balustrade is quite eroded in the case where there's no glazing, and then on the left-hand side you can see the balconies with glazing. So actually, it's very concrete. We're talking about the impact of driving rain. Driving rain means really heavy rain with wind. And then salty water is also causing decarbonization. So basically, putting it simply, making the concrete to go apart itself. And then, we are, again, there's a university study which is telling that the renovation costs over basically a maintenance cycle are actually reduced by extending the lifetime of the facade by 10 years. Actually, there are calculations which are telling that if you have a facade with Lumon kind of products, both railings and glazings, that, okay, of course, there's no proof at the moment, but it can be calculated what's the expected lifetime of such facade, and it can be even between 60 and 130 years, which is really long. And the reason here is that we are talking about glass and aluminum, which are extremely durable materials against weather. Okay, here's an example of one renovation object. Actually, this is from Copenhagen that we did recently. On the top left-hand corner, you see an ugly-looking building which was built in 1970s or around that time. And then on the lower left-hand corner, you see how the building looks today. And on the right-hand side, the big picture, how does it look from inside? So this inside photo is about one floor there, and it gives you basically the impression that what's the difference between the architectural solutions in the 1970s compared to what you can make the building be today with our solutions. So actually, the building itself not only looks modern, but it is really literally modern, also from the user perspective. And of course, it's far nicer to look from outside. So then the next thing is the reduction of CO2 emissions of the building materials as such. So which is, you remember that if we think about an apartment building, 30% of the CO2 emissions over the lifespan of such an apartment building is caused at the construction stage of such building. So reducing the CO2 emissions there at that stage is really very important. And there's two key things which, for example, we can offer. And both are actually pretty unique. There are, of course, there could be similar solutions available in the market already, but anyways, we want to be in the forefront here as such. So one is the low carbon balcony glazing, which is meaning that we would use recycled aluminum and recycled glass. And with that, we could actually reduce the CO2 emissions of the ready-made product by between 40 and 50% as such. Of course, I want to make a note, because this is actually the whole logistics chain and the manufacturing chain of these raw materials is actually a totally new thing. It means that these products are more expensive. We're talking about 15 to 20% more expensive than the usual ones, but it's possible, and we are certainly very interested in talking about those cases. If you have such a case where the CO2 emission reduction is really significant, and if you want to be in the forefront with these kind of products as such. And then the second thing is the building integrated photovoltaic, which is meaning what we call e-railing. So the railing itself actually becomes a generator of electricity through solar cells, and that's a new thing. Again, this is a solution where there seems to be more and more players in the market, and different quality, etc. I want to highlight one thing, which is of course, the durability of the whole thing, and then that there are bigger and smaller players there, and you need there a truly sustainable company to do that, which is available then after 5 years, 10 years, etc., and by still being alive. So that's what I'm highlighting here. You can have easily a product which is working just like 1 year, and then it's this whole technology is evolving so quickly that especially the solar cells, which are supposed to be integrated between the glass panels themselves, that's actually you have the challenge of product development there in general. Now, but Lumon is actually a long-standing company and will stay with you then afterwards. That's the main message here. Okay, what is the E-rating bringing to you? Actually, this is here is an example of southern Finland. Of course, the further south we go, the better numbers you would get. So we are talking about in the southern part of Finland, which is really north. You know, we talk about the latitude of 60 degrees north. So when we go lower, like 50 degrees, 40 degrees, 30 degrees, so closer to the equator, that's what I'm talking about here, the numbers are getting better. However, the interesting point here is that the cooler the air and the solar cells are, the better they are in generating electricity. So the cool environment is actually an important aspect here as well. Of course, if we think about apartment buildings generating solar energy, you could do that with solar panels, which you install on top of the roof. But typically, the roof area is only 1/3. The installable, solar cell area is only 1/3 of what it can be if you install these kind of balcony railings. So the facade is so much bigger. Of course, the taller the building, the more area you have in the front. Okay, what are we talking about here then? What is the level? Basically, if we think about apartments on average, this power generation, annual power generation is meaning here up in north, actually 35% of the annual power consumption of your apartment. And actually we would reduce 110 kilograms of CO2 emissions. Doesn't tell actually too much as such, but if we compare to the more and more popular electric car usage and basically charging the batteries of electric cars, we are talking about when we are talking about the average electricity consumption of an average electrical car in Europe, we are talking about 3,000 kilometers. Of course, that becomes longer and longer as we get lighter and lighter electrical cars, but that gives you a little bit of an impression what we are talking about here per apartment again. And here in the north, when you go further south, it's of course better numbers. So these are moderate numbers as such. Okay, so then a little bit about the low carbon raising once more. We are talking about 40 to 50% lower CO2 emissions at a little higher cost, and of course the product itself is exactly like any Lumon glazing, and it's the only difference is that the raw material is of recycled origin, and so there are some implications related to the fact that we are using recycled glass. Of course, we need to test things that, how does the glass actually look, etc., etc. But in principle, the suppliers that we have been talking with and the top suppliers in Europe, they are telling that the glass is exactly like is the primary glass, so first time virgin made glass, and the same thing with the structural features of aluminium and the aluminium profiles that we're using, and particularly so from the safety and look perspective, we are talking about exactly same standards as with first time used aluminium and glass. So the product is exactly the same, but because of the costs of such materials, it's a little bit more expensive. So it's still a very different and unique product, because at least so far we haven't found anybody else providing such a product in the marketplace. So if you have any projects where this is really relevant, then we can start serious discussions about that. And then, of course, the key thing is that what is time span that we are talking about here. And I must say that because these are facts, what I'm mentioning here in terms of the CO2 emission numbers, we don't want to talk about theoretical cases. We are ready to talk about very concrete and materializable projects, which the money is available and all that. So it's this is not a theoretical thing; it's a very practical thing already. So then, if we think about sustainability goals as such that our customers have, and of course we want to achieve our goals, which is that the CO2 emissions of our own operations are lower and lower. And in fact, by end of next year, Lumon's own CO2 emission in our factories, which is a major part of our own operation as such, we are going to lower, we have a commitment to lower the CO2 emissions by 80% compared to the situation in 2022. So by end of next year, 80% lower. And it can be actually that we can reduce the emissions even more, but that's the commitment. Now, of course, in our case, the raw materials are playing even more significant role. Actually, it's 90% of the CO2 emissions, of over 90% of the CO2 emissions caused by the whole value chain of making the product. The Lumon part is only less than 10% today, so we want to minimize that part. But then, for the material part, we are offering this possibility of lowering 40 to 50%, as well as also even offering a product like the e-railing, which is generating energy, solar energy, it's renewable energy, and which is meaning that you can reduce your CO2 emissions over total building over the life cycle significantly. So that's all in all here. Now on the upper left-hand corner, we have some numbers here. So energy saving, heating energy saving up to 16%. 95% of the materials that we are using are actually recyclable. We're talking about actually glass and aluminum. Actually, we are very close to 100%, to be honest here, because we use steel, and then we are using also particular plastic components there, which both steel and of course plastic are also recyclable. It's possible to use them again for other purposes. So it's actually, this is a modest number here, 95%. Then we already talked about this up to 10 years extension of maintenance life cycle. So the maintenance period is extended by 10 years. And in 100 years, this means that instead of three or even sometimes four renovations, you need to make only one renovation, which is a significant cost saving. And the sooner you do that now, the better for the people who are living in there, and then the better for the owners of that building. So this applies also to the rental and social construction kind of things. And we have big examples of cases where actually the cities have basically always designed, when they make rental apartment buildings, the facades are already designed from the beginning with this kind of balconies, because then the renovation costs are so much lower. And as mentioned earlier, and showed one case in Copenhagen, for example, the look and the feeling and the usability of such balconies is totally on another level. And then one more bubble there, which is the 20 decibel bubble. So up to 20 decibels of noise reduction, if you have, for example, street noise, traffic noise, these kind of things, with this kind of solution, you can reduce 20 decibels. Actually, again, we can go beyond that if we are actually adding some other structures like acoustic panels to the roof or balconies, etc., etc. But with our products, you can go relatively easily to 20 decibels in all the cases. 20 decibels means a reduction of if we think about the heard noise experience, we are actually reducing it, cutting that to half, and that it's actually significant, really, as such. And then, if we look at again, we started about talking about the role of balconies as such. So I mentioned in the beginning that balconies as such are more sustainably built space than indoor space. For example, when we are talking about concrete framed buildings here, and so the structures are very light, glass, aluminum, and then of course you need to have the balcony slabs there. But the whole trend here on the lower left-hand corner, you have here like an illustration of, in a way, area where you shift from indoor to outdoor, depending on the weather sometimes, but also particularly the season that you are living in. So the inner space, which is cooled and which is air conditioned, so heated as well, you can actually, build that to be a little bit smaller if you have appropriate balconies. Now, I want to highlight the meaning of balconies also in the social construction, because this way, if you have smart looking and smartly built balconies and smartly renovated balconies, you can create a lot of joy to the living of people who are there. And then, of course, the look of the whole area, living area, will be totally different if you use these kind of products in the facades. So and that's the whole idea of balconies. Instead of just building balconies which people can't use. Okay, just to summarize what is Lumon here, we are coming to the end of this presentation. We are a 180 million euro company in terms of revenue, over 1,000 people, and we are delivering our products to over 20 countries in the world, and actually we have delivered in over 30 as such, but primarily markets are actually Europe and North America as such, where we operate, and that's why we are now talking about this sustainability, because that is a top topic here. And then we have two brands actually. Lumon, which is the balcony glazing and balcony facade and terrace brand, and then we have Visor, which is the blinds and a blinds company that is under the same roof of Lumon ownership as such. But those are the two brands here. Our NPS last year was 71, which is really high number. Also, eNPS 45 is really high if you compare to similar companies or the construction industry in general. And last year we actually built 39,000 terraces and balconies more with glazings, and we delivered over 80 kilometers of railings and balustrades, and we made 650 projects. So this, out of this, is actually the sales to consumers. So the individual single house terraces and the individual balconies sold to consumers. So these are true construction projects that we are talking about. And then we delivered over 150,000 visor blinds. So it's actually an increasing business as such, and a very interesting product, by the way. Again, improves basically the living experience a lot if you use the blinds. You can have not only on the balcony glazings and the balustrades as well, but you can actually install them also to normal windows, and they are pretty much even end customer installable as such. So it's a product which is becoming more and more popular in the world. We are delivering them even to Chile in Latin America. So it's really works everywhere, in the north, in the south, and in the middle. Okay. This is actually one statement that we have got from a design director. Timeless design is a promise of longevity. The minimalism of Lumon design, avoiding wow design, too flashy shapes and styles, is a result of sustainable design development. With restrained sensibility, we aim for far-reaching, timeless design that supports versatile architecture. So that's actually a statement that we have got from a design director outside Lumon, which is actually describing in a nice manner this topic. So this is the end of this presentation, and now it's a time for questions, and I'm actually handing over the words to Evelina.
Thank you, Jari, for this very interesting presentation, and I hope you got some new viewpoints on today's topic, and thank you for all of you for listening. We have now got some questions through the registration form before the webinar, so let's now go through some of them. And the first question is like, how do you recycle materials at Lumon?
Basically, if we think about construction sites, which is the main topic here, we have to bear in mind that at construction site we are not delivering anything more materials that are really needed. So this is actually very different from, for example, materials like concrete, which you always need to deliver a little bit of excess amount there. So that's number one. Number two, of course, when we buy aluminum glass, there's cutting waste, which is actually excess amount of that. And all that waste is going back to the glass factory and back to the aluminum suppliers. So that is all, the waste is recycled as such. And those are the key, from the environmental load perspective, the key aspects. And then as mentioned, at the end of the life cycle of our products, aluminum glass can be recycled as mentioned. It doesn't matter if it's used or if it's brand new, you can recycle them anyways. So that's the answer to that question.
Thank you, Jari. Then the next question, how can we get subsidies for our projects with Lumon?
Basically, depending on the country, there are different kinds of subsidies. And especially in the bigger countries, they have policies for that. The base thing is that, of course, you should be actively searching for that information from your local, authorities, what is possible. And when it comes to our kind of product, our salespeople are ready to discuss with you, and we are ready to work with you how we could meet the requirements for such subsidies, to the very best. So we are ready to help you with the paperwork which is relevant to the Lumon products.
Good. Then let's take the third one and the last one. How can we incorporate a greener future within the social housing planned maintenance programs?
Basically, I refer to the presentation here. In social housing, one fundamental aspect is the living space itself, and providing more space to the tenants at very low cost is actually one of the best advantages of this kind of balconies. So it's literally more roof for life. And then second thing, to the owners, so to the cities or whatever the communities are that are owning those buildings, this is meaning lower life cycle costs and lower energy costs as well. So typically, depending on the country and depending on the owner of the buildings, you could, of course, increase the rent a little bit. You know, if you have such, balconies which are equipped with balcony glazings and are good looking and all that. That's not always possible, but that's one thing. But we have calculated that at least in most of the cases, the owner of the house is getting a return on investment over the lifespan of the building anyways, no matter if they increase the rent or not. Actually, so it depends on it's a political decision what you want to do, but the business case is always there. That's the message.
Great, thank you so much, Jari. Our time is soon up, so it's time to end this session. And thank you for joining us today. And in case you want to continue discussions with us, you can find us on our website at lumon.com. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.